Once upon a time, in the crowded, beautiful chaos of Ibadan, that ancient city of red rooftops and steep hills and markets that truly never sleep, a young woman sat alone on the floor of a single room, her back against the cold wall, both hands pressed flat against her stomach, and she made a decision that would define her for the rest of her life. Her name was Amara Folake Bello. She was 23 years old. She was 4 months pregnant, and the man she loved, the man whose child was quietly growing inside her like a secret the world did not know yet, had packed his bags 2 hours ago, walked out of that room, and had not even looked back once. Not once. Not even at the door. She had watched the back of his head disappear into the darkness of the corridor, and she had pressed her hand harder against her stomach. And she said to the child inside her, she said it in a whisper so quiet it was almost just a breath, "It's just you and me now, and I promise you that will be enough." She did not know in that moment how true those words would become. She did not know that 9 years later, the man who walked away would come looking, and that when he found her, she would be far above him, that the distance between them would feel like the distance between earth and the sky. But first, the beginning. Amara Folake Bello was the second daughter of a school teacher father and a petty trader mother from Abeokuta, Ogun State. She had grown up in a household where money was always counted carefully and prayers were said loudly, where her father graded exercise books at the dining table every evening, and her mother woke up before dawn to go to Kuto market to buy the goods she would resell by the roadside before school run. She was not the most beautiful girl in her class at the University of Ibadan. She would tell you that herself, with a small, honest smile. But she had something that beauty alone cannot give. She had a mind like a sharp blade, quiet and precise, and always cutting straight to the truth of things. She studied economics. She graduated with a second-class upper. She had plans, clean, careful plans, written in a notepad she kept under her pillow. A master's degree, a job in finance, a small apartment of her own by 30, a garden eventually. Those plans did not include Tunde Savage. Tunde Savage, and yes, Savage was his actual surname, inherited from a Lagos grandfather who had worn it like a badge. He was 26 years old when Amara met him. He was the kind of man that makes careful women do careless things. Tall, laughing, easy in his body the way people are easy when life has never truly pressed down on them. He drove a second-hand Camry that he had polished until it looked brand new, wore a cologne that arrived the room before he did, and had a smile that opened slowly, like a flower deciding whether the morning is worth the effort. He was doing his NYSC in Ibadan when they met at a mutual friend's birthday party. He found Amara in the corner where she had retreated from the noise, nursing a bottle of mortar and reading something on her phone. And instead of being intimidated by her obvious preference for her own company, he sat down beside her and asked, "What are you reading that is more interesting than this party?" She looked up. She looked at him with the careful eyes of a woman who has been taught that the world is not always safe. "My textbook," she said. "I have an exam on Monday." You came to a party to read a textbook?" "I came because the BC said there will be small chops," Amara said, "and there are no small chops, so I am reading." He laughed, a real laugh, not a performance, and something in Amara's careful chest shifted slightly, like furniture being moved to let in a little more light. They talked until the party ended. Then they talked outside in the car park for another hour. Then they exchanged number. And Tunde called her the very next morning, not to play games, not to wait the required cool boy 3 days. He called at 9 in the morning and said, "I have been thinking about you since I got home. I think that means something." Amara sat with her phone and looked at the wall and thought, this man is going to complicate my life. She answered, or it means you did not sleep well. Amara, Tunde, have lunch with me, he said. She went. The relationship that followed was the kind that takes a careful woman and dismantles her carefully, not violently, not all at once, but gently, piece by piece, each piece replaced by something warm and bright, until the day she looks in the mirror and realizes she cannot find the careful woman anymore. Only someone new, someone soft and open and a little bit frightened by how fully she had given herself. Tunde was attentive. Tunde was funny. Tunde called when he said he would call and showed up when he said he would show up. And for a woman like Amara, who had quietly armored herself against men who did neither of these things, this consistency felt like luxury. It was like rain after a long, dry season. He said things that settled deep inside her. He said to her, I don't want the polished version of you. I want the morning version, the one before you decide to be composed. He said, my mother would like you. You remind me of her. The way she carries her mind in front of her like a lantern. He said, Amara, I'm serious about you. I need you to know that. She believed him. She believed every word with the full weight of a woman who does not give her belief lightly, and therefore, when she gives it completely. 8 months after they met, she discovered she was pregnant. She told him on a Sunday evening. They were sitting on the small balcony of his rented apartment in Bodija, the city spreading out below them in its rumbling golden lit evening beauty. She had rehearsed the words 6 times in the bathroom mirror. She had prayed. She had told herself that whatever his reaction would be, she would be calm. Tunde, she said, I am pregnant. The silence that came after was different from other silences. It had a texture to it. It was dense, complicated, full of things moving around beneath the surface. She watched his face. She was very good at reading faces. It was the economist in her, always tracking data, always looking for what the numbers behind the numbers were really saying. What she read on Tunde Savage's face in that moment made the careful woman she had dismantled try to reassemble herself quickly. He did not smile. He did not reach for her hand. He looked at the city below them and he was very, very quiet for a long time. How far? He asked finally. His voice was even, controlled, the voice of a man making calculations. 4 months, she said softly. There was another silence. Amara, he began. Don't, she said. She didn't say it sharply, just firmly. The word of a woman who can already hear what is coming and is choosing at least to make him say it to her face instead of hiding behind a gentle preamble. He turned to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes was the thing she had been afraid of since the first day in the corner of that party. Since the first time she felt herself softening towards this man. The thing she had prayed for was not there. She saw a man who was already in his mind somewhere else. I'm not ready, he said. I'm not. Amara, my service here ends in 3 months. I have to go back to Lagos. My father has a job lined up for me. I cannot. He stopped, started again. This is not the right time. For you? She said. For both of us. You have your plans, your master's degree. Don't use my plans to justify your decision, Amara said, very quiet, very clear. I know what I want. I've had 4 months to think about it. The question is, what do you want? He looked away, and in the looking away, in that single sideways movement of his eyes, Amara received her answer. He did not leave that night. He left 2 weeks later. After 2 weeks of conversations that went in circles and silences that grew longer, and one terrible night of shouting that scared the neighbor's dog. He offered her money for what he called options. She declined without anger, without drama, in the same calm voice she used to answer examination questions, steady, factual, and final. On the night he packed his bag, she sat on the floor with her back against the wall and watched him move around the room gathering his things. He was neat about it, folded his shirts properly, zipped his bag carefully, and something about the neatness broke her more than the messiness would have. It meant he had thought about this. It meant he had planned. At the door, he turned, just briefly. Their eyes met across the small room briefly, across the distance of what they had been to each other and what he was choosing now. And she saw in his face something that she would remember for many years afterwards. Not cruelty, not hatred, not even coldness, just the very worst thing of all. Apathy, the face of a man who had already emotionally moved on and is now only physically catching up. "I am sorry," he said. She did not answer. He left. She pressed her hand against her stomach, against the small, warm, secret life growing there, and she made her a promise. "It's just you and me now, and I promise you that will be enough." She was alone. She was 4 months pregnant. She had 23,000 naira in her account, a room she could not afford alone, and a plan that had not been destroyed. Any other woman might have collapsed. Amara Folake Bello did not collapse. She sat on that floor for 1 hour, exactly 1 hour, and then she stood up, washed her face, boiled water for tea, and opened her notepad. She began to write a new plan, a different plan, a harder plan, a better one, because that is what you do when you are a woman who was raised by a school teacher and a market woman. You do not wait for someone to come back and save you. You save yourself. And you do it completely that by the time they try to come back, there is nothing left for them to save. The next 9 years of Amara Folake Bello's life were not a fairy tale. They were not a smooth, inspiring montage of a strong woman rising triumphantly while beautiful music plays. They were hard years, jagged, exhausting, and sometimes humiliating. And they must be told honestly, because the woman she became at the end of them earned every inch of who she was, and no softening of the truth would be fair to what she paid. She moved back to Abeokuta 1 month after Tunde left. She had no choice. The room in Ibadan was too expensive for one salary, and she was not earning any salary at all. She packed her things, took a bus home, and sat in her parents' living room and told them everything. Her father, Mr. Ezekiel Bello, a man who believed that a good education was the most reliable God a person could serve, sat very still while she talked. Her mother gripped her Ankara wrapper in both fists. When she finished, her father said only one thing: "You will stay here, you will have this baby, and then you will finish what you started." Her mother stood up without a word, went to the kitchen, and came back with a plate of food. She set it in front of Amara and sat beside her and held her hand and did not say anything at all. And somehow, just somehow, her mother's silence was more comforting than any words could have been. Her daughter was born on a rainy Thursday in April. They named her Tiwa Oluwa, which means God's own is mine, and she came into the world screaming with the energy of someone who had a great deal to say and could not wait to begin saying it. Amara held this tiny furious person against her chest in the delivery room and felt something shift in the universe, some fundamental rearrangement of what mattered and what did not. She looked at this child, this complete, perfect, outraged little person, and the plan that had been growing in her mind for 5 months suddenly sharpened into absolute clarity. "Everything I do now, I do for you, and I will not fail." She started working 6 weeks after delivery, not in the finance career she had planned, Not yet, but in whatever was available. She taught mathematics and economics at a private secondary school in Abeokuta for 18 months while her mother minded Tiwa. She saved every naira she did not absolutely need. She researched scholarships for Nigerian graduates with obsessive attention to detail, applying to 14 different programs in 2 years, writing cover letters at night after Tiwa slept, refining them, sending them out into the world like prayers folded into envelopes. On her third application to the African Development Bank's Young Professional Program, she got a response. They wanted to interview her. She borrowed a suit from her cousin. She practiced her answers for 2 weeks in front of the bathroom mirror. She took a bus to Lagos the night before and slept at a church member's home because she could not afford a hotel. She arrived at the interview building 45 minutes early and sat outside and breathed slowly, deliberately until her hands stopped shaking. She walked into that interview room and gave the best performance of her mind's life. 2 weeks later, they offered her the position. The years after that moved differently, not easily. Nothing about her life was ever easy in the careless way that some people's lives are easy, but with a momentum, a gathering speed that felt like finally running with the wind instead of against it. The Young Professionals Program placed her in Abidjan for 18 months, then in Nairobi for 2 years. She worked harder than almost anyone around her and made connections with the quiet intentionality of a woman who knows that in this world, your network is your safety net. She learned French, imperfectly at first, then fluently. She learned how to sit in rooms full of powerful people and speak without shrinking. She learned that her mind, her sharp, precise, data-reading mind that her professors had praised and she had largely ignored in favor of love and plans, was genuinely rare, that it was in fact the most valuable thing she owned. She sent money home every month. She flew Tiwa to visit her in Nairobi when the child was 5 and watched her daughter stand on the balcony of their Westland apartment staring at the city with those large, serious eyes and say, "Mommy, the sky is different here." "It is the same sky, Tiwa," Amara said. "No," the child said with the certainty of a 5-year-old who has already decided. "This one is bigger, Mommy." Amara laughed and pulled her daughter close. "Then we will need to grow big enough to fit under it." Tiwa asked about her father once. She was 6 years old. They were in Abeokuta, in the grandparents' house, and Tiwa had watched a neighbor's child run to meet a man coming through the gate with outstretched arm. And then she turned to Amara with her serious, large eyes and said, "Where is my own daddy?" Amara had been preparing for this question for 6 years. She had thought about it on bus rides and in airport lounges and in the quiet before sleep. She had considered lying, considered saying he was dead, considered building a fictional father who was good and distant for reasons that was no one's fault. In the end, she chose the truth, or as much of the truth as a 6-year-old heart could hold. She sat Tiwa on her lap and said, "Your daddy is alive. He lives far away. When you were still inside my tummy, he was afraid of being a daddy, so he went away." Tiwa was quiet for a moment. Was he afraid of me? No, my love. He was afraid of himself. He was afraid of growing up. Some people take longer to grow up than others. Did he want me? The question landed like a stone in Amara's chest. She held her daughter a little tighter. He did not know yet what he was leaving behind. Some people don't know the value of something until they lose it forever. It's not your fault. It is his sadness to carry, not yours. Tiwa thought about this with the gravity of a child processing a large truth in a small heart. Then she said, "Is he sad?" "I do not know, Tiwa." "Good," the child said simply and wiggled off her mother's lap and went back to play. Amara sat there looking at her daughter retreating back and thought she had somehow raised a child with more emotional clarity at 6 than most adults achieve at 40. By the time Amara was 32, she had been promoted to senior economist at the African Development Bank. By 34, she had completed a master's in development economics from the London School of Economics, fully sponsored, and had been headhunted by the leading Pan-African private equity firm of offices in Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg. She took the Lagos position. She came home. She moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in Ikoyi, the kind of apartment she had written in her notepad at 23 as a goal for 30, which she had achieved at 34, late by her original plan and still 3 lifetimes ahead of where abandonment had threatened to leave her. She enrolled Tiwa in one of Lagos' best international schools. She bought a car for herself, not because she needed it immediately, but because she had promised herself the first car she owned would be bought with her own money and no one else. She furnished her apartment quietly, carefully, choosing each piece with the same attention she gave to financial models. Nothing excessive, nothing performed, everything exactly what it needed to be. And on the evening she sat alone in her new living room with a cold glass of zobo and the Lagos nightscape spread before her window like a reward, she took out the old notepad, the one from under the pillow in Ibadan, and she opened it to the page with her 23-year-old plans. She read them slowly. Then she took a pen and she placed a quiet private tick beside every single item she had achieved. There were more ticks than were items. She had just not reviewed the plan, she had outbuilt it. She set the notepad down, she sipped her zobo. Outside, Lagos roared and sparkled and rushed in every direction at once. And Amara Folake Bello, 34 years old, senior investment analyst, mother of one extraordinary child, owner of her own name and time and future, smiled at the window of the house with a slow-earned smile of a woman who had come through fire and emerged not merely alive but luminous. She did not think about Tunde Savage anymore. That is the thing about rebuilding yourself so completely. There is so little room left for the ruins. But Lagos is not a big city. It is a million small words pressed together, and sooner or later, every word touches another. 3 weeks after Amara moved back, she received an invitation to a business networking dinner at the Echo Hotel. She almost did not go. She had a report deadline and Tiwa had a school project they were supposed to work on together. But a colleague insisted, and Amara, who had learned the discipline of showing up, went. She wore a midnight blue fitted dress and her work face, composed, warm and alert. She walked into the Echo Hotel ballroom, and across the room, through the crowd of Lagos suited and performed business elite, she saw him, Tunde Savage. He had not changed as much as she might have expected. A little heavier, a little more carefully dressed. His hair cut close and neat in a way of men who have arrived at a stage of life where they can afford good barbers. He was laughing at something someone beside him had said. That same slow opening laugh that had once moved something in her chest like furniture shifting. He had not seen her yet. Amara stood for exactly 3 seconds. Then she straightened her shoulder, took a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray and walked, not away from him, but directly across the room, because she had business to attend to and he was not the most important thing in this room or any room she had ever entered again. She was halfway across the floor when he turned, when he saw her, and what crossed his face in that moment? Shock, recognition, something desperate and urgent that he tried to very quickly rearrange into composure. And Amara saw all of it and filed it away and kept walking. She had a dinner to attend. He found her at the dinner table. Of course he did, because men like Tunde Savage do not let significant moments pass without responding to them. It was both his charm and, as Amara had discovered at the worst possible time, his limitation. He could respond to anything. He could not always commit to something. She was seated between a Ghanaian investment banker and a woman from the Nigerian SEC who was speaking with animation about regulatory frameworks. Amara was listening with full attention, contributing at precise moments. Her champagne glass held lightly in one hand. She looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was, not performing belonging, not working for it, but simply inhabiting it with the ease of long practice. Tunde approached during the break between the main course and dessert. He came to her side of the table and stood there, and she looked up, her face composed, pleasant, yet giving nothing. He said, Amara. Just her name, just that. The way you say the name of something you have not allowed yourself to think about for a long time, and then suddenly you're thinking about it with your whole chest. Tunde, she said, equally pleasant, equally giving nothing. He looked at her for a moment like a man reading a document he expected to be simple and finding it unexpectedly complex. You look... He stopped, started again. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes. She glanced at the Ghanaian banker and the SEC woman, both of whom had diplomatically turned into a conversation of their own. She set her champagne down. We have 8 minutes before dessert, she said. Yes, we can talk. They stepped into a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, Lagos Harbour glittered with lights reflected in a dark water. Between them, the heir held 9 years and a daughter, and a decision and all its consequences. Tunde, to his credit, did not pretend or delay. I heard you came back to Lagos. I did not know you were coming back. There was a reason for you not to know. Amara, you have 8 minutes, Tunde. Please use them wisely. He looked at her, really looked at her, the way he had not allowed himself to look in the 30 seconds across the ballroom when he had seen her and felt the floor shift slightly under him. You are different, he said. I am older, she said. That's not what I mean. I know what you mean, she said. Say what you came to say. He exhaled, set down his own glass, looked at the harbour outside for a moment and then back at her. I made a mistake. I've known it for years. I told myself it was the right decision at the time, that we were both young and I was not ready. He paused. But the truth, Amara, the truth was that I was a coward. I was a coward and I chose my own comfort over my responsibility. And I've spent a long time living with that. She listened to this without expression. When he finished, she said, Is that an apology? Yes, he said. Accepted, she simply said. I forgave you a long time ago, Tunde. Not for your sake, for mine. Anger is expensive and I needed the energy for other things. Something crossed his face. Relief, yes, but something else. Something that looked like the beginning of a question he was afraid to ask. He stopped. Is there a child? Amara looked at him steadily. Yes, she said. Her name is Tiwa Oluwa. She's 8 years old. She's brilliant and healthy and the best person I know. Tunde closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were different, fuller, heavier, carrying something she had not seen in them before. His voice was not steady. I want to meet her. I want to make it right. I know I have no right to ask, but no. Amara said, one word, without heat, without drama, without the satisfaction of someone who had been waiting 9 years to say it. Simply, no. He stared at her. Amara, she's my daughter. I have rights. You have rights to pursue legal remedies if you choose, she said, and her voice now had the quality of a woman who had consulted lawyers about this exact scenario and knows precisely where she stands. I'm not going to obstruct your legal rights, but what I will not do is open a door for you simply because you have decided today that you would like to open it. Tiwa is a person. She's not a door. She's not a wound you can come back to dress now that you have found your conscience. That is not what did you think would happen? Amar asked, not unkindly, genuinely, that you would find me say sorry, and I would hand you the daughter you abandoned? That she would be waiting for you like a gift you left on a shelf and came back for? Tunde had no answer. Tiwa has a life, Amara said. A good, full life. She has 2 grandparents who adore her, an uncle who teaches her chess, and a school where she's doing extraordinary things. She is not suffering from your absence. She had been loved so thoroughly that the space where you were supposed to be has been filled. Not replaced, filled by people who chose to stay. The words landed on him one by one, each one with a precise, deserving weight. My 8 minutes are nearly up, Amara said. She picked up her champagne glass. I am not your enemy, Tunde. I do not wish you harm, but I need you to understand something clearly. She met his eyes, and hers were so calm, so completely without the wound he had expected, that he felt the absence of it almost physically. You do not have access to me anymore, not to my softness, not to my history, and not to my child. You had that. You made your choice with it. I made mine, and mine led me here. She gestured, not broadly, not dramatically, just a small quiet gesture at herself, at where she was standing, and at what she had become. I am not angry with you, but I am not available to you. There's a difference between those 2 things, and I need you to sit with that difference. She looked at him one final time, the way a woman looks at a chapter of her life she had already fully read and set down, and she said simply, "Good night, Tunde." Then she walked back to the dinner table, took her seat between the Ghanaian banker and the SEC woman, and when the dessert arrived, a beautiful arrangement of chin-chin and coconut ice cream and fresh mango, she accepted it with a smile and resumed the conversation about regulatory frameworks with the full genuine attention of a woman who has far better things to think about. Tunde Savage sat in his car in the Eco Hotel Park for 40 minutes that night. He sat there and he thought about every single thing he had told himself over 9 years to make the decision he had made feel reasonable. He thought about how he had convinced himself that she would be fine. She is strong. She will manage. As if strength was something you could assign to a person and then use it as a permission to abandon them. He thought about the daughter he had never seen, whose name meant God's own is mine, who was apparently brilliant and healthy and the best person her mother knew. He thought about what it would feel like to be that child's father, to have watched her learn to walk, to have heard her first words, to have been the man she ran to with outstretched arms when he came through a gate. He thought about the way Amara had looked at him at the dinner table. Without hatred, it would have at least been a form of connection. But she looked at him with a calm, complete, unreachable composure of a woman for whom he was simply no longer relevant. That was the thing that broke him. The fact that she had moved so completely, so thoroughly beyond the pain he had caused that she arrived somewhere he could not touch. He had walked away from her when she was at her most vulnerable state, and she had taken that vulnerability and built it into armor, and then beyond armor, into something better than an armor, into peace, purpose, into a life so fully her own that there were no rooms for regrets. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Amara's office. It was from Tunde's lawyer, formally expressing his wish to establish a relationship with his daughter and requesting mediation. Amara read it. She placed it on her desk. She sat quietly for a moment. Then she called her own lawyer, the woman she trusted completely, and said, "He has made his legal approach. Let us begin the process completely." She did not hate him for it. She respected it actually. It was the most responsible thing he had done in the whole 9-year story of their connection. He was trying to do the right thing, finally, through the right channels, but she was not going to make it easy. She was not going to make it fast. She was going to make it careful and structured and fully on Tiwa's stance, because Tiwa was a person, not a wound, not a door, not a gift left on a shelf, and she deserved to be the one who decided, when she was old enough to decide, what she wanted from this man who had chosen absence and now chose presence. Amara decided that was the most she could do for the both of them. Not forgiveness. She had already given forgiveness to herself years ago. Not reunion. That was not hers to give. But the possibility of something handled carefully with her daughter's heart placed first. That evening, she picked Tiwa from school. Her daughter climbed into the car with the energy of a child who has had an important day and cannot wait to report on it, talking immediately and rapidly about a debate competition she had won and a boy in her class who had said the wrong answer so confidently that the entire class had laughed. "Did you laugh too?" Amara asked, navigating Lagos traffic with one hand easy on the wheel. "No," Tiwa said. "I felt bad for him. I know what it feels like to be wrong in front of people." Amara glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "When have you been wrong in front of people?" "Last time, Mommy. In geography, I said the capital of Tanzania was Nairobi." "Nairobi is in Kenya." "I know that now," Tiwa said with great dignity. "That's the point." Amara smiled. The smile went all the way through her. They drove home through the loud, alive, impossible city of Lagos, and Tiwa chattered and Amara listened, and the evening light came through the window like something that had been specifically arranged to fall on them. Amara thought about what she would say to her daughter someday when Tiwa was old enough to hear the full story. She thought about how she could tell it without bitterness, not softly but honestly, with the clear-eyed care of a woman who believes her daughter deserves truth over protection. She would tell her about the room in Ibadan, about the wall she sat against and the promise she made. She would tell her about the hard years and the scholarship applications and the suit borrowed from a cousin and the interview she walked into shaking and walked out of changed. She would tell her about Nairobi and London and Abidjan and the notepad with the ticks. She would tell her about the dinner at Eco Hotel, not as a victory story or a revenge story, but as a story about what happens when you decide, in your very worst moments, that you are going to build something so solid and so completely your own that nothing and no one can ever make you feel like you are not enough. She would tell her, your beginning was painful. It was not your fault, but your beginning is not your whole story. Not unless you let it be. She parked in the compound of their Ikoyi apartment building. Tiwa was already unbuckling her seatbelt before the car fully stopped, already talking about what she wanted for dinner, already living fully in the present moment, the way children do. No weight of the past, no anxiety about the future, just the clean, bright now of a child who had been loved into security. Amara watched her daughter run ahead towards the entrance, and something large and quiet settled in her chest. She felt wholeness. It was the feeling of a life that had been broken and rebuilt, and broken again and rebuilt better, until the rebuilt version is stronger than the original ever could have been. The feeling of a woman who had walked through fire, not unburned. She carried her scars, but she always came out undefeated. "Mommy, come, I'm hungry," Tiwa called from the entrance, hands on the hip, performing impatience with the theatrical commitment of an 8-year-old. Amara picked her bag. She got out of the car, walked towards her daughter, towards her life, the one she had built with her own hands and her own mind, and her own refusal to stay in the place that abandonment had tried to fix her. She walked into it without looking back. The moral lesson of this story reminds us that some people will leave you at your lowest point and expect to find you there when they are ready to return. Still hot, still waiting, still small enough to need them. Please disappoint them. Not with anger or bitterness. Those things are too heavy to carry. You will need your hands free for building. Disappoint them with your life, with who you've become in the space they left behind, with the extraordinary things that grew on the soil of your pain when you chose to water them instead of sitting inside them and mourning. You are not the worst thing that happened to you. You are everything you built after it. And there is no sweeter justice in this world. No courtroom verdict. No revenge plotted. No confrontation scripted that is sweeter than the justice of becoming quietly and completely and on your own terms absolutely untouchable.